Welcome to Growing Your Firm, brought to you by Jetpack Workflow. We're here to help firms unlock the secrets to help you reach your goals faster. And now, here's your host, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow, David Cristello.
Hey everybody, David Cristello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is John Ensley. He is the president of JEnsley Financial, a fiduciary financial planning company he founded in 2012. John has dedicated himself to helping clients implement the simple yet powerful systems he uncovered. These systems, unknown to conventional financial planners, stockbrokers, and advisors, enable individuals to save and create wealth by minimizing the detrimental impact of what John calls the money monsters. Now, we talked a little bit about John and who he is, but what we're really going to talk about in today's interview is we're going to talk about how do you create partnerships, across the aisle, I guess. We have a lot of firms we talk to, and they've built out partnerships with wealth management. We're going to talk about what that looks like, with John throughout this interview. We're also going to talk about, when we were doing the pre-interview, I said, John, tell me something a little maybe unusual about your journey, maybe something that's a little bit different. And he goes, oh, well, I used to spend half the year in Mexico and I'd work like 10 to 20 hours a week. I go, okay, that's it. I think everybody listening right now is going to perk up a little bit and say, gosh, not only how did you do that, but John, what the heck did you do with your time if you weren't stressed out and obsessed with your business? So we're going to talk about those things and so much more. But John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. I'm so excited to be here.
Very cool. Well, before we dive into partnerships, help me understand a little bit more about your firm. We had mentioned when it was launched and kind of what you do, but help me understand a little bit more your client base. Are you typically servicing business owners, or is there a niche within that, or how do you think about that?
So my practice is based on helping people, that could be entrepreneurs, business owners, families, et cetera, create a system for saving, investing, and borrowing. And typically we're using life insurance products to facilitate that platform, some of the unique features there. So in the entrepreneur business owner world, that can have multiple applications, anywhere from using that as a component of an overall owner or entrepreneur retirement plan, but also as a cash flow management tool within the business. And there's a lot of different approaches. So that's kind of my niche, is that little corner of the world.
All right. Love it. Makes a lot of sense. So if I'm a listener right now and I run a small to medium-sized accounting firm, or I'm a leader there, and my clients are coming to me, they've asked about wealth management, or I just have a feeling that, gosh, I could probably partner with somebody to take these on. How does that story unfold? How have you worked with firms in the past? What goes well? What doesn't go so well? How would you even approach maybe somebody who has an interest in this?
Great question. And I think it happens a couple of ways. I think there's a couple of paths that wealth management professionals and accounting professionals can cross paths. And one of those most common is probably in a conversation with a client on my end. I'll give a disclaimer that's probably good to give anyway, and that is I am not a tax professional, right? I'm a financial planner. I'm not qualified to give tax advice. I don't give tax advice, right? And I say this to every client that would be in this kind of a discussion, that you need to go see your accountant, right? You need to interact with your accountant and talk about the strategies that we just discussed to make sure that we're all on the same page from a tax strategy standpoint, because I don't do tax advice, right? And we're super clear about that.
Interesting. So sometimes we think about this path because so much of our community is running accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, tax firm. And we think about, well, how do you reach out and work with a wealth advisor, or maybe add this as a deep partnership? But it sounds like, based off of your relationships, it actually surfaces a lot in your conversation. And then you're thinking like, hey, do you have somebody on the tax side to talk to? It sounds like that it's really a two-way street.
Yes, for sure. And I always encourage as well, I'm happy to jump on a call or go meet with, your accountant, right? If we need to talk through the specifics, I'm always happy to do that. And I think there really should be that synergistic relationship, because there are components to the financial plan by necessity that are going to be tax related. So we need a tax expert involved there. And that's not the financial planner. So there should be a pretty natural relationship there. And also, interestingly enough, quite often the question that comes at that point is, can you recommend someone?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oftentimes maybe they're using a tax preparation service. They're not really using an accountant. So they don't immediately know who do I now go talk to about this. And so it opens the door for me to send referrals, to the accounting firm that way as well. But that's hard to do until we build that relationship so that, I know what that firm's focus is and whether it fits this particular client situation, those kinds of things.
So how have some of your past referral partnerships come together? Was it organic and then it's been formalized in some way, or kind of walk me through when a client comes to you, they ask for a recommendation. Those recommendations you have today, how did they come to be?
So through other clients, usually I'll know someone in their area. My practice operates virtually. So I have clients all over, mostly the Western United States, but all over the country. So I kind of need this network in multiple states, depending on where they're located. But it usually comes through other clients where I meet and get to know someone and understand what they do and vice versa, that it's easy to then refer them. I think the other thing there is that I'm always reaching out to build that network, right? Just reaching out. And I think sometimes there's this feeling that some firms may get that all these wealth management people are reaching out to them simply as a marketing function to get referrals. They may not think about the other side of that coin, that we often need to refer people that direction. And so I think most of those relationships are not formalized. They're very informal, sort of on a mutually beneficial platform where we're kind of on the same team, helping the same client. I do my thing, they do their thing. And that's as formal as it gets. That's probably the most common.
Yeah.
But then that can develop into other things. Like we can do joint seminars. I can invite an accountant in for a webinar to do a topic and vice versa. Those kinds of things can also be a lot of synergy there.
Have you had any experiences in the past with, you had a referral? I'll say this word very loosely based on what you said, agreement of sorts. Hey, we work well. Has it ever gone sour? Has anybody ever gone dark? I mean, I'm trying to understand the characteristics of a great referral partnership versus one that maybe didn't work out. So as the listeners are thinking about putting one together, even informally, like you had mentioned, like what to watch out for, what to be cautious of.
I haven't had a relationship or a referral that just crashed and burned, right? That really hasn't happened. I've had some that worked way better than others. And I think the ones that work well are where both parties, the planner and the accountant, understand what each other does. And so we're utilizing the right mix of things for that particular client. So I know that this accountant specializes in small business owners, they're contractors or manufacturing companies or whatever the case may be. And I know this client in my planning discussion has this need, maybe it's equipment leasing. And so I'm teaching them how they can use a cash value life insurance policy within their business to finance equipment leases in order to take cash out of the business and not pay self-employment tax. Go down this whole road with a client. There's a whole bunch of touches in there that the accountant needs to be involved in.
Yeah, got it. That's super interesting. And how much time, you mentioned it's kind of an ongoing investment to build these relationships, just at a high level, because I know it might vary depending on how busy a quarter is. But I guess how much time, or I guess how many people are you meeting on a quarterly basis just to continue to build your network?
It goes in spurts. I tend to focus on reaching out to accountants during some periods and then back off from that and focus on other things. So in a quarter where I'm focusing on it, there's a lot of email communication and so forth to then have a conversation with someone. So, I would say maybe one a month.
Got it. Okay. Well, to switch gears a little bit, I teed it up at the beginning where we talked about this strange scenario where you kind of are in Mexico half the year, you're spending 10, 20 hours a week on average working on clients. So first question is, what decisions led you to a place where you were only working 10, 20 hours a week? And was it a factor of you just taking on less work? So like your income declined 50% and you worked 50% and hey, it worked out? Or did you have systems where revenue was rather stable and you're still able to work 10 to 20 hours a week?
Right. So, and this is, I really love this direction that we're going. I didn't expect it. Right. So this is going to be great. But so for me, it was kind of a life journey that took me that direction, because I was working in the corporate world and sort of took a U-turn into financial services and started my firm in 2012. And when I left the corporate world, I just decided it sounds a little cliche, but somebody handed me a copy of the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, right? That led to kind of an epiphany that, hey, the technologies are here, the systems are there to be able to build whatever I want, however I want, and kind of take back control of my time, which is to say, take back control of my life. And so I designed the firm from the ground up, kind of with that model in mind. So I just decided, since I'd spent so many years in the corporate world working oodles of hours and traveling all over the place, that I was going to do this the way I wanted to do it. And the first stage of that journey was just designing it so that I worked when I wanted to work and I did other things that I wanted to do and built a successful business at the same time.
So by default, your target was always to do something like 10, 20 hours a week. So like from day one, that's where you want to accomplish that.
I don't think I set out to put a specific hours per week on it. It was really more of this is the kind of lifestyle I'm going to build. And, I'll also say it was not consistently 10 to 20 hours a week. There were some weeks where it was 50 hours, but there were weeks where it was 0. And there were weeks where it was 5. So, I'm using an average of probably 10 to 20 hours a week. And at the same time, I also built the business so that it was location independent. So that was another factor. It was, okay, I'm native of Washington State. And if anybody knows Washington State in the wintertime, it's very gray and wet here. And so I said to myself, well, if I can work from anywhere, why would I spend the winter months in Washington State? And that's how I ended up making the Mexico move.
Okay, got it. So your design was around the lifestyle you want to have through the business, 4-Hour Workweek, very influential in kind of helping you move in that direction. It's 2012. You had a location independent business, which 11 years ago, you're really on the beginning curve of going remote. Side note, it's funny, we were remote for 3 years and nobody believes in remote anymore. It feels like at times, but it's like, guys, we just did this for 3 years. I think there's something we could figure. Anyways, we'll leave that for another one. And I have nothing against in office. Believe me, we've had an office as well. And I understand there's times where you want an office and you need an office. Sometimes in the community, I hear this rebuttal against, working from home, but it's been around for a little bit, and we all had this great experiment where we did it for a few years.
Yeah.
So whatever camp you're in, just pick a camp. This hybrid stuff, we gotta figure out something else. You're either in or you're out, right? You're not.
Yeah, I agree.
Hybrid. Oh, hybrid just feels so painful, right? You get the worst of both worlds. Anyways, I digress. So you have some weeks where you work 0 hours or 5 hours, some that's 50. I think for a lot of our listeners, as very ambitious leaders, owners, partners, look, we're talking and we're listening to a podcast about how to grow. The concept of having a week where you have an extra 20 hours to yourself is both exciting and terrifying. So did you have by design what you were going to do with your free time, or did you create the free time? You're like, oh crap, now I have to do something with it. I guess help me unpack of how you psychologically made that shift, because I can tell you for me, it'd be very hard. I imagine for listeners, they're going to be like, what is my worth if I'm not working 40 hours a week? It feels so weird.
Right. It is a weird feeling to come to grips with. And it was a little of both, in that I started building the practice and started getting things going. And I kind of realized, okay, well, I can see that I'm going to free up some time. That was my goal, but I don't think it wasn't quite real till I started seeing it happen. And then I literally sat back and said, well, what do I want to do with this extra time I have? And in my case, I'm very passionate about sailing and sailing yachts and so forth. So I decided to put some focus there and got a captain's license and sailing instructor certifications. And so kind of added that to the repertoire of something that I did purely out of the joy of doing it. I just love teaching people about sailing and cruising. So that's what I did with a lot of my time. And again, that was sort of another element of the Mexico move.
Interesting. So I'm just curious now, did you have to go from 0 to 1 to get this captain's license? Were you already pretty well versed at steering boats? I'm obviously not
Yeah, I had years of experience on the water. So the captain's license piece was just a matter of completing some courses and passing some Coast Guard tests and so forth. But the days on the water is one of those requirements, and I had plenty of those.
Got it. And were you getting paid to, did you have this little like almost side hustle where you're teaching people how to steer
Yeah,
a ship?
absolutely. So
Yeah.
what I was teaching were 7-day live aboard cruising courses on 40 to 50 foot monohulls or catamarans, sailing catamarans, both up here in Washington and the San Juan Islands and down in Mexico in the Sea of Cortez. So yeah, it pays. I don't know that I'd want to try to make a living at being a sailing instructor, but there is some compensation involved.
No, it's interesting because, you kind of think about, how do you split the dream life? And it's like, well, I'd love to do this full time, but I also want to have a nice house, right? So it's like, okay, well, you could do 20 and 20, right? Or, 20 hours here, 20 hours there, or, 0, 100, or 0, 50 in other weeks. And I think it's a really smart way to split it. And it's interesting, there's this whole little movement, well, maybe it's not that little, this FIRE movement. I'm sure you've seen it on threads and message boards too. Financial independent, retire early. And part of it is, reduce your expenses so low that your nest egg doesn't have to be that large. And then you no longer need to work to sustain yourself. And there's a bias here of kind of what I see. But when I see people reach it, they then become like educators on different things, right? Like they've always had this interest in, maybe it's just finance, they become YouTubers on finance. Maybe it's on sewing and they get super into sewing, but they kind of like, it's interesting, once people reach this retirement, they end up just kind of creating their own new job for themselves, which sounds like somewhat similar to what you did.
Well, and it is somewhat similar in retirement, right? For a person who does retirement planning, I actually don't care for the word retirement. Well, all it means is a passive income to do what you want with your time. That's all retirement is, right? The traditional version of retirement is you have enough assets built up that you can stop working, and those assets will produce enough income for you to do what you want to do. You don't have to wait till you're, old to do that.
Is there a shift in the mentality of thinking about retirement then as you continue to work with, different, I don't want to make it a generational thing, but it's like maybe different, I guess I'll call it generations of business owners? Or are they saying, well, like, I kind of want to work forever, I just don't want to work like this forever? Is that becoming more the norm?
Much more than norm. One of the key questions that I ask a client is, what does it look like? What is that retirement or that dream you have? What does it look like? Walk me through it. And quite often you get the response that, well, I'm never going to just sit on the porch in a rocking chair and sip on a cocktail all day long. I'm always going to do something. I just may not do what I'm doing today. I think that's a very, very common theme, particularly, again, without making it a generational thing, particularly with the younger generations coming up into the professional world.
I guess we're all going to play pickleball. That's a big thing. Maybe we'll go in that direction. I don't know.
Right.
Everyone's playing pickleball now. Well, John, this has been a real treat. I appreciate you coming on. If folks listening want to reach out, connect with you, learn more about what you're up to, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, the very best way to connect with me, I have a landing page set up that's jumponwithjohn.com. And on that page, you can request a quick strategy session, short call with me, and we can talk about whatever's on your mind and find out if there's a fit for us and so on and so forth.
Very cool. That's jumponwithjohn.com. Everything's spelled exactly how it sounds.
Yes, John, John.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'm going to link everything up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll put the URL there. We're going to do a full summary of today's notes if you couldn't jot everything down. And, a call to arms. We talked about networking here today, so take John up on his offer. If you enjoyed today's interview, leave a review. It helps us get the word out. And if you really enjoyed this interview, if we talked about something that really ignited a new idea for you, share it with a fellow firm owner that needed to hear it. It's the best way to say thank you to John and myself for carving out the time today. John, it's been a real treat. Thanks for coming on.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me, David.
Thank you for joining Growing Your Firm, the podcast series for global, small, and medium-sized businesses ready to scale and increase profits. You can check out more podcasts by following the links in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. At Jetpack Workflow, we're all about maximizing returns for accounting firms and CPAs. Check out more podcasts on growing your firm and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.